Welcome to Parish and Community. My guest today is Dr. Benjamin Defoy. He is a professor at the Department of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences at St. Louis University. He's also a parishioner. So thank you very much for joining me today. How are you today, Doctor?
Good, thank you.
Excellent.
Well, thank you for the invitation to come.
Absolutely. How did you become part of College Church?
You know, I was thinking about this, and a friend of mine recently, his father passed away, and he sent me a beautiful picture of his father fishing, and he said the river was his cathedral. And just we all have that innate need of the sacred, and I think for me the environment is a big part of that. But also being part of College Church and that feeling of the sacred in the building itself, in the liturgy, in the community. And also in my case, for the religious education, for the catechesis of the Good Shepherd, I think really opens up that sense of the sacred for the children. So that was a big part of it.
Oh, excellent. So you knew about our catechesis programs, and that was part of what brought you to the parish? Or did you discover that after?
No, so my office is just 2 buildings over from the church. And so I knew of the church, obviously, from being in the university. And then I heard of the catechesis of the Good Shepherd program. And I met Angie Durr, and she showed me all the great things. And I felt like, oh, you know, I need to move to this parish.
Sure.
And then, of course, we stayed after that. So.
How did you come to be at St. Louis University?
Well, I've pretty much always wanted to be a professor in a university. And so, you know, you've got to be prepared to move when you're a scientist and you want to be an academic. And I was looking for a job where I could balance teaching and research. And so when this job came up, I applied. You know, it seems really odd to say, but I didn't really even know if St. Louis University was in St. Louis or not. You know, there's a St. Louis Cathedral in New Orleans. I had to look this up before I applied for the job. And we've been very happy to be in a family-oriented place.
That's wonderful. What are some moments in your own faith journey? You talked about your connection to the environment as a sacred space. Was that always with you, or is that something that has developed over time?
I think so. We spent a lot of time, you know, hiking, walking, being outdoors. That's always been a big part of spirituality for me. I think also, you know, like a key moment, something that was very helpful for me when I was in college. I was part of a Bible study group. It was led by Father David Saunders, a Dominican, and it was great. He had a few rules. One rule is you could come and test it out, but then you had to commit. You had to be there. And the other rule was we'd go around in the circle, classic style, but everybody had to say something. It didn't have to be earth-shattering, but everybody had to participate. And then the most important rule of all was afterwards, we always met on Sunday nights. Everybody had to go to the bar upstairs and share a drink together. So that was a great group.
That's great, getting that idea of community together with the participation. Those Dominicans are pretty smart.
Yeah, we can learn from each other even in a Jesuit place.
So with your teaching in earth and atmospheric sciences, tell me about the kinds of students that are drawn to that kind of program.
Yeah. So on the atmospheric science side, we have mainly meteorology students who are really interested in forecasts. They're usually interested in severe weather. And so there's kind of a split, the people interested in rain, tornadoes, the people interested in winter storms, snow. For the rest of the department, there's a lot of students interested in environmental issues more broadly, and especially with water. We now have a lot of research in water, in river system, in pollution. You know, for example, how all the salt that we put on the road, how that goes into the stream system and what impact it has on species and things like that. And then the longest running part of the department was seismology and earthquakes.
Oh, yeah.
This was back in 1830 with the New Madrid earthquake. The Jesuits at the time were the ones who knew about seismographs, and so they sent some seismologists over to St. Louis to study this.
I did not know that. That's fascinating that we have that connection in the Jesuit community with the earthquake. Well, I won't ask you to predict when the next earthquake is coming in St. Louis. We've gotten into trouble with that before in St. Louis, predictions like that. So how has the pandemic affected your classes?
Well, it's been tough. It's been hard. I've got to say though, want a big shout out for our students who've done a really good job making it work. The administration, the staff. I think every family has its problem areas. I think the university has really come together to make this work, and it's been really great. It's been really great to work here and to see how everybody was willing to put in what needed to be done. In terms of teaching, we're teaching hybrid, so some people are in person, some people are on Zoom, and we're having to navigate that. For a long time, in history, if you look back in history, people have predicted the end of the university. They said,
Yes.
oh, now we have the radio, we won't need universities anymore. And these have never panned out because teaching happens in person. We learn from each other and from a professor and the professor from the students. And so that's, with the pandemic, we've seen that it's hard to learn as well as we would without. Thankfully, with technology, we can make do, but we're looking forward to being back in person. And I think people see the value of an education that's in person.
Tell me, because you're not just teaching, but you're doing research, and you use a lot of computer modeling, you use data analysis. My own intuition about this, and I've not studied it at all, but it seems, as I've been watching how folks model emissions and pollution conversations, it seems to just get better and better the ways that people can pinpoint what's going into the atmosphere and what effect it's having. Have you seen that over time? Is that true? How has the modeling, computer modeling, changed over the time that you've been doing this?
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's been a tremendous improvement. I mean, we see that for forecasts. Weather forecasts are much better now than they've ever been.
Yeah.
And we see that for air pollution too. You can now measure things in the atmosphere, and then you can find that people are emitting substances that that were illegal, that were phased out, and you're like, oh, that's the source, that's the culprit. So the techniques are getting better and better. But I also want to emphasize that in terms of air pollution, there's been a lot of progress.
Yes.
And so the air is much cleaner. So as we go forward, we're getting much better at identifying sources and then at finding replacements and doing it in a productive, savvy way, I would say.
And you had a particular focus in Mexico City, as I understand it, as I was looking at your bio. Because Mexico City is kind of in a bowl. You were studying whether everything was kind of trapped in that bowl or whether it was being cleaned out. Right. Have you kept up with Mexico City? Is that something you go back to? Do you plan to go back to it, or is that kind of a one-time thing?
Yeah, I mean, I worked for quite a few years before I came to SLU, and then in the early days at SLU on Mexico City's air quality. It was a big project that was put together by Dr. Mario Molina, who won the Nobel Prize for predicting the ozone hole. And he said, now that I have a Nobel Prize, people will finally listen to me. Politicians will finally listen to me, so I'm going to do something that was actually outside of his discipline. He was a lab chemist, and he said, we're going to do field work, and we're going to do something. He was from Mexico City, Oh,
that's fascinating.
And it's been great to see the progress there.
Yeah.
Mexico City used to be one of the most polluted cities on Earth. It's much better now, and it was totally overtaken by Asian cities. So my research has kind of moved. I have quite a few projects now in Asia, Korea, China, South Asia. But also I've done things over the US and California and in St. Louis right here. We have pollution issues too.
Yeah, tell me about how St. Louis compares, or what things you notice about St. Louis now that you're here.
In terms of air quality, we have, I mean, our issue actually, we're very fortunate to have very clean air. And I think I want to go back before we start saying, okay, there's improvements to be made, to say, 100 years ago, if you wore, I'm not wearing a white shirt, but if I was wearing a white shirt and I went home in the evening, it would be a black collar from soot, from all the coal we were burning. The botanical gardens was planning to move outside the city because its plants were dying. That's how bad things were. And now we have, on a day like today, clear blue skies.
Yeah.
So there are issues. One of the big issues in St. Louis to do with pollen, for example. And that shows how air pollution and atmospheric chemistry has diversified into issues that, 100 years ago, we were not worried about pollen. We were just worried about staying alive.
Right.
So, yeah.
So have you seen effect from the data that you've collected and published research that policies have changed, that you're able to see movement from the folks who are policymakers or the kind of business community on how they are affected by this?
I mean, I think, these are big efforts that take a lot of people. So I don't think an individual, unless you're Mario Molina, in the case of Mexico City, we saw that. We saw people come together and say, oh, these are things we can do. A lot of the other things are in the long run. And some of the things that we do is also a diagnostic to say, for example, in China, pollution was really increasing, and then about 2010 they said, okay, we can't have this anymore, we've got to do something. And so science, and they did, and some of my work has shown the difference that it made. And so just making visible the results of the policies, to say, look, we put in these policies and it helped,
Sure,
that in itself is an encouragement to
absolutely
keep going.
Yeah. Now you have mentioned that Pope Francis is Laudato Si, and even the Beatitudes have informed some of the conversations you have about this. Talk a little more about that.
Yeah. I brought a little prop, actually. This is a prop
Thank
I
you.
use.
Okay.
So I don't know if this will work, but it works better in person. But, whoops, it doesn't work. And this is what we see.
Yep.
I'm just gonna see. What we want with environmental issues is we usually want the one solution, the silver bullet that will be easy, that everybody will do. And that's especially something like climate change. That's not something that's going to work. What we need is multiple different approaches of people coming together. And I think we see that in Laudato Si, that movement that I was talking earlier about, respect for nature, love of nature, finding common ground. Say, we can all take a deep breath and say, when was the last time I said thank you for this oxygen I just had? Like, where did it come from? This is all part of this kind of thinking. And then once we kind of find that middle ground, that common ground of caring for the environment, to say, well, different people will want to do different things, and maybe some, we'll all need to do sort of personal actions, we'll do societal actions, and we'll think about what it is that we're living for. The three different balls, and it's hard, like you see.
It's hard.
I'm not a juggler. I do this actually intentionally. Well, I don't intentionally fail. I'm not very good at juggling, but it's the same with policies. We find it hard to keep things going and to say, let's get away from the partisan sort of name calling and say, we're in this together. We all breathe the same air. It goes around 20 days, it goes all the way around the globe, and we're all breathing it in. So let's find solutions together. And I think that's really what the Pope was trying to do. I think from the science perspective, it was very nice to see how he sought out the best scientists and said, you tell us, what the cutting edge of the science is. We're not going to tell you that. And then we kind of try and integrate that into our spirituality and our faith, and we bring the two together.
Okay. This has been a great conversation. I really appreciate all of the time that you've spent today with us. I look forward to sharing this with the parish at large.
Great. Thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you.